Hi everyone, welcome back to my class. My name is Mariana Naranjuribe, and today I'm going to show you how I will teach three verb tense that I think are the most difficult. So let's start with the class. Okay, so today we are going to learn about the present perfect, past perfect, and modal verbs. So in each one of these verb tenses, we are going to see the uses, examples, their structure and activity, and some things that we need to remember when we use these verb tenses. Okay, so let's start with the first one, that is present perfect. We use present perfect to talk about action that began in the past and continue in the present. Have a close relation, the past with the present in this verb tense. Is to talk about an action that hasn't concluded, a regularly recurring action, and an action that ended recently. So to support that idea, we are going to see some examples in affirmative, negative, and interrogative form. So in this verb tense, we have the auxiliary have and has. Has for the third person. So I have worked in a bank since 2002. The second one, because we are talking about the third person, that is she, or can be he or it, we use has. She has gone to the library 3 times this week. And the last one, they have just received the result. In the negative form, we only add not to the auxiliary. For example, have not, or the contraction that is haven't. Has not, or your contraction that is hasn't. For example, I have not worked in a bank since 2002. The second one, she has not gone to the library 3 times this week. And the last one, they have not received the result. And in the part of the interrogative form, we use the first one, the auxiliary, that depends on the subject. For example, in the first one, we use have because we are talking about you. And have you worked in a bank since 2002? Has she gone to the library 3 times this week? And the last one, have they received the result? So to support that idea, we are going to see the structure of the present perfect. So in affirmative form, we have the first one, the subject, plus the auxiliary that can be have or has, and we need to know that has is with she, he, and it, plus verb in participle, plus complement. In the negative form, we have subject plus auxiliary that can be have or has, and something that is important because we need to talk about negative expressions, we need to add not between the auxiliary and the verb. After that, we have the verb in participle plus complement. So the question, it's important to know that we start with the auxiliary that can be have or has, plus the subject, plus verb in participle, plus complement. So we are going to see the verbs in the past, in infinitive, past, and past participle. In this case, we need to use the third column. For example, in infinitive is be, in the past is was or were, in participle form is been. We are going to use this third column, and don't forget. So we're going to do 2 activities. The first one, we're going to listen a song that is We Are the Champions by Queen, and according to this song, we're going to identify the sentence with the present perfect. Okay, so we're going to write this sentence in a word, in a book, in a paper, and we're going to show the answers. After that, we're going to do a Kahoot that that it have 23 questions about the present perfect. Can be about the auxiliary and the verb that we have to use. And the last one is important, these points, because you need to remember when you are using the present perfect and is use the correct auxiliary. And for example, we can use she have lived in New York. That is incorrect. The correct form is she has lived in New York. We have two auxiliaries, have and has. We need to identify with which one we use. We use that auxiliary. And the second one, we need to remember to use the past participle. As I said before, is the verb in the third column. And for example, it's incorrect if I say he has ate. No, the correct form is he has eaten. So remember that. The second part is the past perfect. And why I choose these verb tenses perfect? Because I know that is a little difficult, for example, to know what is the auxiliary, for example, learn by heart the verb tenses. So if we practice, it's easier to learn this part. So for that reason, we are going to practice that. So the past perfect is used to describe an event, situation, or action that occurred before another event in the past. So this is the past or the past. For example, this is the present, this is the past simple, and this is the past perfect. So that is something that happened before the past, okay? And is used to mention situations that began and lasted until a specific time in the past. So it is emphasizing in the time that situation occurred. Okay, so we are going to see some examples to support that idea. So in affirmative form, and something that is important in this part, we use the auxiliary had with all of subject pronouns. So for example, I have eaten a lot of cookies before the meal. For example, the meal is the past simple, the past, but before this past I did something else. Okay, the second one, you had paid our hotel before we arrived. The third one, she had done her homework as soon as she could. Easy. The negative form, we use had not or hadn't. Okay, I had not eaten a lot of cookies before the meal. You had not paid our hotel before we arrived, and she had not done her homework as soon as she could. Okay, and with the question part, always in the question part we start with the auxiliary. In this case, had I eaten a lot of cookies before the meal? Have you paid our hotel before we arrived? And has she done her homework as soon as she could? Okay, to support these examples, we are going to talk about the structure that we have in this part. In affirmative form, we have the first one, the subject, plus the auxiliary had, that is the same with all of subject pronouns, plus verb in participle, remember verb in participle, plus complement. Okay, the negative part is starting with the subject plus auxiliary had plus not plus verb in participle and complement. In the question part, we are going to start with the auxiliary had plus subject plus verb in participle plus complement. So we need to see this part that it shows us the verbs in infinitive past and past participle. So in this case, always we are going to use the verbs in the third column, that is been, had, done, and say. So in the activity, we are going to put into a practice our knowledge about the present perfect. So we are going to see the trailer of Matilda, or just remember the movie, and we are going to have a discussion. So in this part, one student are going to ask to another student about the different situations that we have to use past perfect. Okay, these questions are perfect to talk about and using sentences in the past according to the movie and according to the personal information. And the last one, to practice the participle verbs, we are going to do a crossword. Okay, and something that we need to remember, obviously, is always conjugate the verbs. Okay, we don't use the verbs in past. No, don't use the verbs in past. We use the verbs in participle. For example, eating, done, etc. And don't confuse the past perfect with the past simple. In this case, we are emphasizing in the duration of the action, but the past simple is always, for example, start and end, no more. But in this case, we pay attention to the duration of the action. Okay, and the third one that we are going to learn is about the modal verbs. So in this case, we are going to talk about their uses, their types of modal verbs, example, structure, activity, and obviously something to remember. So we use the modal verbs to express possibility, ability, and necessity. Okay, and they are for example, a type of auxiliary verb that are used together with the main verb of the sentence. Okay, and to support that idea, we're going to see some examples with each one of types. So let's start with can. Can, it is a modal verb in present, and it expresses ability, permission, and request. And for example, in ability, in the present, we can say she can speak 3 languages. In a permission, could be, can I go to the party? In a request, can you close the door? This is the points that we can use can. Okay, could, in ability, is the past of can. So for example, we could skateboard when we were little. In the past, we could. Okay, in a permission and the request is the same that can, but it is more formal. So for example, could I eat cake, or could you help me? In a request, and this is the difference. After that, we have might and might. That could be the future of the can, but with a percent of the probability. So for example, we can see that may have a 15% that something happened. And for example, with my, we have, for example, 10-15% that something happened. And for example, we can use both, for example, in a possibility. For example, he might be here in 2 hours because he's in a traffic. And as we are using might, is low possibility. But if, for example, we use might, we have, for example, 50% that he will be here. Okay, it's more possibility. And for example, may is most common in a permission. Okay, for example, may I speak now? It is most common may. After that, we had should. Should is just used to give an advice to other people. For example, I should start studying right now. And for example, to give an opinion, something like that is used should, but it's always an advice. Okay. After that, we have must, and must is used to assumption or an obligation. For example, in assumption, we in a situation normal, we can say, for example, oh, her parents must be so proud. And it's most common to see in an obligation. For example, you must work from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. On the other hand, we can use must not in this part to a prohibition. Okay, for example, you mustn't smoke here. It's a prohibition to smoke here. Okay, and I need that you have clear this part. And the last one, we have would. Would could be, for example, the future of can, and is also used when we want to be very polite. And for example, when we need to ask someone to do something, and when we are inviting someone to do something. For example, a little example, would you like the broccoli salad as a side dish? Something like that. Okay, and with all of these modal verbs, we have the same structure, and it's very basic and easy. For example, in affirmative form, we have subject plus modal verb plus main verb plus the complement. In the negative form, we use add not between modal verb and main verb. That we have subject plus modal verb plus not plus main verb plus complement. In the question, we are going to start with the modal verb plus subject plus main verb plus complement. So in this part, we have a very interesting activity because we have 9 images. And each one of these images, we have a situation that with our imagination, we are going to create a sentence with each modal verbs. Okay, for example, with the first one, we're going to use an appropriate modal verb with the sentence. Okay, and that is all of activity because we need to use all of the modal verbs. And something that we need to remember with the modal verbs is usually in the infinitive verbs used to, but in this case we don't need to add to after the modal verb. Okay, for example, isn't an incorrect form say he came to come home at 8. That is incorrect. The correct form is he can come at 8. To is prohibition in this part, okay? And something that is wrong is, for example, conjugate the modal verb. For example, he came dead. He came dead yesterday, something like that. Can and all of the modal verbs isn't in a grammatical sentence. No, this is like I give you can, could, and it isn't changed. Okay, so thank you for this class. I hope that you enjoyed that class, and see you the next step. Bye.